Welcome to Caker 101. Today's topic, candy clay and modeling chocolate. What's the difference? Well, the type of chocolate you're using. You may have heard of compound chocolate, you may have heard of things, or seen chocolate chips, but you've also may have heard of couverture chocolate. So candy clay is made using, i.e., or lack of better terms, fake chocolate. So compound chocolate which contains unnatural ingredients, so other fats other than cocoa butter, whereas modeling chocolate uses pure chocolate, the real good stuff. Today we're making candy clay, I'm using chocolate chips, which would be considered a compound chocolate or a coating chocolate. Merkin's wafers or Wilton's wafer chocolates would also work in this case, but the ingredients change slightly based on the type of clay or modeling chocolate you want to make. So remember this, the link is in the below to get the recipe for either making candy clay or making modeling chocolate. So for candy clay, we're going to use chocolate. You will need corn syrup. In this case, we will use clear because I'm going to be making a white a white candy clay. If I was making a darker chocolate, I would just not be too concerned and I would use the golden corn syrup. The clear would be best in the case of white because it won't add any tint of color. It's already going to be slightly yellowish because white chocolate is not naturally pure white. You can get pure white candy melts from Wilton and or Merkin's, but in this case, my chocolate chips are slightly yellow. So what we're going to use here is 12 ounces of white chocolate chips. You're going to need a microwave safe bowl, a microwave safe measuring cup, and a rubber spatula. I'm just going to move these ones out of the way because I'm not actually making that color today. The reason I'm doing white is because I'm going to show you how you can actually color the modeling chocolate as you make it instead of doing it at the end. You can certainly color it the same as fondant where you would just knead in food coloring, but if you know you need a whole batch of something in a certain color, go ahead and do it as we make it, but we'll get into that later. What I'm doing now is, you can't see, I just threw it in the microwave for 30 seconds to start. It's going to take a little bit more than 30 seconds, but what we don't want to do here is we don't want to scorch the chocolate or we don't want to overheat it. Overheating it will knock it out of temper. And tempering is something that you really need to get into when you're dealing with a couverture chocolate, so i.e. a real chocolate. Here the chocolate chips, they're already in temper because they have other fats in them keeping them together. They're slightly harder to work with, chocolate chips, because if you think of a chocolate chip cookie, they don't typically melt when you put them in the microwave, or in the oven rather, sorry. Your chocolate chips still come out as whole chocolate chips when they come out of the oven. So the wafers do melt down a little smoother. I didn't have any on hand, so for this demo, chocolate chips does work. You just got to take your time, do it in a slow process, take it out every 30 seconds, and give it a stir just to make sure you're melting properly. While that's melting, you can prepare your corn syrup. So in this case, I'm taking a quarter of a cup. So it's a quarter cup of corn syrup for every 12 ounces of chocolate. Now again, we're talking about couverture chocolate. Sorry, not couverture chocolate. We're talking about coating chocolate or compound chocolate rather than real chocolate. The ratios do change, so please be sure to check the link for that. But you can see we're starting to get some melting action here. 30-second increments is all you need, and generally for this amount, anywhere from 1.5 to 2 minutes in total is usually enough. Once our chocolate is smooth, we do need to warm our corn syrup. And here's where we're going to get into coloring as well. So you can add coloring directly to chocolate, but if it's not an oil-based food color, what's going to happen is you're going to seize your chocolate. And by seizing your chocolate, if you've ever gotten water in your chocolate before and it goes all crumbly, that's what's called seizing. Just about melted here. So the reason I suggest you place your food color into your corn syrup is because it's going to dilute any water that's left. So corn syrup is mainly sugar. The food colorings I'm using are not oil-based, they're water-based. So if I squirt that directly into my chocolate, I'm going to end up seizing it and ending up with little tiny crumbly chocolate that's not going to turn into a smooth modeling chocolate or candy clay. Taking the chocolate out one last time, and it looks perfect. So we're going to set that aside and we're going to warm our corn syrup. 20 to 30 seconds. You don't want it to be scalding hot, you just want it to be warm, because if I were to put cold corn syrup into my warm chocolate, it's going to seize up my chocolate, and not seize it in a way that it can't be fixed, but it's going to make, you add cold to hot. So think of adding an ice cube to water, it cools it down. We want them to be relatively the same temperature when we add them together so that they make a nice homogeneous mixture. So once you take it out of the microwave, if you are coloring your batch of chocolate, squirt your food color into your corn syrup and give it a stir. Here I used a light amount. I didn't want it to be a super dark. I will show you in the end how you can make it darker, but for now we just wanted a light amount so that I could show you chocolate. What I do like to do as well, because sometimes you get some hard chocolate bits left on the sides of your bowl, I like to transfer it to a nice, new, clean bowl. That way I know I'm getting only melted chocolate and no hard bits that didn't melt. And I just put that aside because it wasn't, those bits had set up around the side. So go ahead and add in your corn syrup. And here's where you need to be very careful. You want to just stir until combined. If you overmix, you're going to start pulling the oils out of your chocolate. And it's not ideal, right? So gently fold your chocolate until you get a nice mixture. I like to refer to it as soft serve, or even almost like a hard serve ice cream. It gets a odd texture. Don't worry too much if your blue doesn't completely, or whatever color you're using rather, doesn't get completely combined. But you do want to make sure that you don't overmix and you get everything almost completely mixed together. So here you can see it looks almost like a cross between a hard serve and a soft serve ice cream. At this stage I'm going to stop because I don't want to overmix it. Get some plastic wrap, and I like to use 2 layers just because why not? And you're going to flatten out your modeling chocolate or your candy clay onto the plastic wrap. Now this stage is just because you need to cool it down before you can go any further. The flatter you make this, or the larger you make your disc, the faster it's going to cool for you. At about halfway through the cooling process, we got to take this out and we have to knead it to make it an actual pliable dough. Set it aside, and we're going to come back to it in about 15, 20, 30 minutes. You can speed up the process by popping it in the fridge, but you really need to be careful by doing this. So as it sets, it's going to harden a bit, and it's going to allow you to knead it like you would have fondant or any other dough. So after it's set for 15, 20 minutes, unwrap it, and here we have our almost ready candy clay. We need to knead this. If we let this rest too long and get completely solid, we're going to end up with a solid brick of chocolate again. This stage is crucial and very important to actually make your dough. So as it rests and gets a bit harder or colder around the edges of the block that you set aside, that's when you're going to take it out and knead it. And it might be a little crumbly at first, but it will come together. The heat of your hands will help bring this into a nice smooth dough. If it's too crumbly, you may need to adjust your ratio slightly when you do make the dough or make the candy clay the next time. So here I'm just kneading it and making sure it's one nice, smooth, homogeneous candy clay. The benefits of candy clay are far outweigh fondant for its use. So every medium we use in cake decorating has its intended purpose, has its use that is what one thing is better than another in a certain circumstance or situation. So modeling chocolate is fantastic when you're doing sculptured cakes because it's a lot firmer. It allows them to hold things together better. It sets up on its own. Whereas fondant needs drying time or gum paste needs drying time, modeling chocolate can be manipulated and sets up almost immediately because the chocolate will harden. You can mix modeling chocolate and fondant in a 50-50 manner. So you can take 50% or even more than that if you need to. But then you have the benefits and the taste of modeling chocolate mixed with your fondant, but you have the pliability of fondant. Fondant is a lot more pliable than modeling chocolate. So when you do a 50-50 blend, you're able to use it for far greater applications because you can roll it out much larger into sheets. You can cover full cakes with it. So you're getting the added flavor of chocolate, but you're getting the benefits of fondant when you do that. I use the 50-50 blend a lot when I do 3D sculptures for the bulk pieces, and I'll use chocolate if I need something to set up almost immediately. So I'll use a full candy clay. You can make flowers out of modeling chocolate if you use a solid modeling chocolate. Just know the more fondant you add to your modeling chocolate, or your candy clay rather, the longer it will take to set up or dry. But if you're using 100% candy clay, it'll set up almost immediately. So now, just to show you, you can color your modeling chocolate or your candy clay the same way you would a fondant. You can add your coloring directly to the dough itself, whereas I know we talked about when you were adding it to melted chocolate, it would seize. Here we have a dough, so we can add it directly to the dough. So I'm just going to take this same blue color that I initially dyed the corn syrup, and I'm just going to darken a small piece so that you can see how it, you can see how it darkens the same way, or it colors the same way as a fondant or a gum paste typically would. So I do recommend gloves for this part because you don't want to stain your hands, but just add your dye as much or as little as you want, depending on how deep or dark you want the color that you're looking to achieve. Remember though, with gel food colors, a little goes a long way, and as they set, the color will deepen. So I generally recommend, if you're going to color any kind of icing, fondant, buttercream, gum paste, modeling chocolate, do it about an hour or so before you need to use it. And always think a little less, because it will rest and it will deepen in color. But again, I'm just kneading this in my hand. If it was a bigger ball, I would do it on the counter, same as I would a big chunk of fondant. But you can see that it easily incorporates into the modeling clay or candy clay, and allows you to color it whatever color you want. So that's a navy blue Chef Master color. And again, I could have added that much color to the full batch when I first made it, but I didn't want it that dark. I wanted to be able to show you that you can deepen your colors, or just make white and color it as you need it later on. I just feel if I'm going to need a lot of blue, for example, why do the extra work in the end when I can make the blue as I go and use it right then and there? So now you can start using it for your project. So whether it's to make little swirly cues, so here I'll show you that you can, the benefits of modeling chocolate are that if I were to make this little swirl, it will hold up on its own almost immediately, whereas with fondant, it would need to have some kind of support. It would need time to dry before I could actually stick it on or use it on a cake. Here, I'm able to manipulate it and use it almost immediately. It's a little bit warm from coloring it so deeply, but if I popped that in the fridge for literally 30 seconds to a minute, or even the freezer, it would set up almost immediately. Got a can of freeze spray, spray it up and you're good to go. But this is a little warm again because I did need it a lot to get the color incorporated. But you can easily see that it's holding its own shape. It's not needing any kind of wires or toothpicks or skewer supports, and I'm able to place these right on the cake. So if you were making an octopus, this would be a great octopus tentacle, and it would hold its shape really well for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. There's lots of beneficial uses of modeling chocolate, and I have a few examples on my blog of where I have used it in the past, but it can be interchanged anywhere that you see fondant used. Again, play with it, get in the kitchen, experiment, and enjoy yourself. Try mixing it with your fondant and see what kind of results you can get. I love to hear from you, so don't be shy. Reach out, but don't forget to subscribe. Take care.